All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Dudes Talking, episode 73, The Real ShadowGate Nexus with Kevin Marsden. Kevin, are you there, brother?
I'm here.
Doing good to have you back. We've been doing a lot of research together to try to hack away at this Hydra. The more you away at it, two or three more heads pop up, it seems like.
It certainly does.
uh,
I've got to say a big thank you to you because you gave me a one piece of the puzzle I couldn't find, and from that it's just blown right open. I'm still finding stuff now, especially to do with Ukraine. But it's interesting because the same names and the same people and the same players, they're all in. It's like a revolving door from
yep.
one place to the next place to the next place.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
happening with a lot of the generals. You know, they pop. Well,
Well,
we got.
this is the issue. This is the big issue. You have got a huge problem in America with your generals, and let's talk about one in particular to start off with.
Okay.
Let's talk about General Wesley Clark.
Okay.
General Wesley Clark was the head of NATO, and this is his NGO thing, Renew America Together, with some interesting people on there. Mr. General Wesley Clark was the head of NATO in Kosovo, Albania, and Serbia at the time of the conflict. Now, he would have been in direct contact with all the NGOs and the people in that area. And remember, the news at the time was saying that Serbia was this big evil place and all these Serbians were nasty people. And it turns out that the fog of war, the Kosovans were bad as, in fact, in some cases, far worse. And anyway, the 2IC of NATO was Lieutenant General Brigadier Mike. Oh, I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, he was the British general, and Mike Jackson, the guy you don't mess with. He's a real hardcore general. So anyway, 1998, they were there, and then Soros was also there. Then Billy Boy turns up, old William Jefferson Clinton, and the man that introduced Soros to Clinton would have been the head of NATO, which was General Wesley Clark. General Wesley Clark is a very interesting character because on January the 15th, 1999 was the incident at Razak, R-A-C-A-K, where supposed to be 40 people plus killed by the Serbians, according to the propaganda. But when you go to The Hague and to the trial of Slobodan Milosevic, you actually find out that KLA were there with a force of 47 people. And they were using small arms, heavy weapons, and mortars against the Serbian forces. So this is a lot of controversy about this. But it was that determination that on March the 24th, 1999, that Bill Clinton illegally used NATO and American forces to bomb Serbia, as well as the capital Pristina in Kosovo. Wesley Clark was, like I said, the head of NATO. There was an incident that happened when the Russians turned up as part of the peacekeeping force, and Clark decided he was going to put the helicopters on the thing to stop the planes coming in. And it was Mike Jackson turned around and basically told him, "Do you want me to start fucking World War III?" and basically refused to do the order. So Jackson basically stopped Clark from doing what he was doing, which could have caused World War III, literally, at that situation. So in 2000, Clark retires, such as the same time as Slobodan Milosevic is removed from power. Clark retires, but he doesn't just quite retire. He ends up working for a company called PNK Petroleum, where Mr. Soros has 20% stake in the company. It also connects to Poland, to a guy called Kaczynski, who was then the president of Poland, who was also the head of the PKI Bank Poland, who also is now sitting as a board member on Burisma. So you can see this connection going here. So Wesley Clark was also brought in by George Soros and others and the Polish general to oversee things in Ukraine. So you got Wesley Clark, Soros, again, connection with Ukraine. But then he was also given a job as an advisor to the Romanian president just straight after a colour revolution. And it's the colour revolutions that was started in basically 89. There was a couple before that, but the main one was 89. It was called the Velvet Revolution or the Gentle Revolution in Czechoslovakia. And it was a peaceful one. And it was from this people got the idea. Now, the guy that wrote the manual was a guy called Gene Sharp. And Gene Sharp created this thing of 198 different ways of peaceful revolutions to overthrow governments. All of this, I'm telling you, John, goes to your State Department, run out of there. If it's not military intervention for regime change, they're using what I will call revolutionaries for hire. And the Revolutionaries for Hire is an organization called OTPOR. A group of 10 students that were there in Serbia in 1998 at the Belgrade University. Because of the propaganda of media, they believed that their country was evil, blah, blah, blah. So the PSYOP was working because there was a PSYOP going on as well. Psychological warfare to inform, to influence, to activate people into radicalization, basically. And the American ambassador was a guy called Robert Miles, and he got in touch with these guys, and they were trained apparently by the CIA, and they created the organization OTPOR, and then OTPOR became like this big focus thing in Serbia. And they had massive amount of money poured into them to make their posters and everything else. And what they did is they got all the different other factions of all the different other parties all together. So they just vote one person to go against Milosevic. Now the state media, which was very controlled in Serbia, which the new president now, Vučić, was a guy in Milosevic's party that made them even more stringent in 98. Mm-hmm. And to this day, they still not got a free press in Serbia. So exactly what OTPOR achieved was nothing. What OTPOR achieved was what Soros wanted. So OTPOR then becomes Canvas. Canvas is now in every single university. So every single university, if you pull up Canvas, if you pull up Canvas, not information, CANVAS. If you pull that up, and we get their page up, and I want you to take it open to the universities.
Okay, so what? www.canvas.org?
I think it is.
Yes. No, that goes to the credit union.
Well, that's credit union. No, Canvas. Just type in Canvas OTPOR. CANVS, Canvas, space OTPOR, OTPOR.
Okay, I got it.
Because OTPOR means resistance. Like I said, if I've shown videos with these fists, which is what they use. They're a socialist Marxist group.
The Center for Applied Nonviolent Action Strategies.
That's the one. Right, now go to university programs.
Okay. On campus?
On campus.
Okay.
Now scroll down. And you're going to see, oh, look at all these universities.
That's a lot. Georgetown, big Jesuit institution. Notre Dame, Yale, Loyola, big Jesuit institution. So yeah, quite a few major colleges within. So
this organization that was a student revolution was utilized in the Georgian Revolution in 2003, which was called the Rose Revolution. And the same ambassador that was in Serbia, who then went to Bulgaria, was in 2002 the ambassador to where? Oh yeah, Georgia. So Otpor and their connections were all there. But what Otpor stroke Canvas were doing was utilizing the internet to communicate with one another. So they realized they could go to other activist groups within other universities because they use students. Because students are just useful idiots, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've all been there.
Yeah.
So the students are then activated into other places, and Otpor will come and give them a speech or help them and give them directions of how to mobilize, how to create their street parties, how to do outsourced theatre, to do their protests, how to make their statement, to use colours, yeah, and to put the signs in their own language, but to also put signs in English. So you know when the colour revolution is going on there because there'll be signs in English as well.
Mm-hmm.
So every single major colour revolution after that, including in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in other places like that, are all linked to this group, Canvas stroke Otpor, which was funded by Soros and the National Endowment for Democracy.
Okay.
Now, the National Endowment for Democracy is still, the person in charge of it, the director of that, is still there from the very beginning. A Democrat. So you got NATO over here dealing with Kosovo, Albania, Serbia fighting. Meanwhile, internally, to destabilize it, what Soros and his money and US aid, sorry, not US aid, the National Endowment for Democracy's money was doing, was funding these students plus other outside interests, and they made films about them. They made, Hollywood was involved. Martin Sheen did his talk over bits about how wonderful these students are. They gave them this real uplifting thing. So then they became like a cult status amongst students, which is why they're embedded within the universities. They teach Gene Sharp's book about revolution.
So with the National Endowment of Democracy, it was founded by Ronald Reagan and Carl Gershman, who's still
Yes.
currently the president of it. Now, wasn't Bill Casey also involved in the National Endowment
Yes,
for Democracy?
Bill Casey was the guy that also gave the idea about it, because Reagan made a speech in '82 in London, and '83 it was created, and Gershwin is still the president of the National Endowment for Democracy. But you see, with the National Endowment for Democracy, cannot put money out because it has to notify everything it's doing through the State Department. So there's a paper trail. So how they got away with it in Ukraine is they used the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, yeah, and the USAID money was then funneled into Ukraine, and most of it was embezzled, stolen, etc. I think Karen Bass is on the board. She's an extremist Democrat, if I remember rightly.
And of course, William Casey too. He was very much involved in the inner workings of the Ron Contra affair and was director of Central Intelligence under Reagan.
Because the National Endowment for Democracy was used for that as well. Look, see here, Karen Bass. Stop a minute. Go up. Scroll back up. Down there. So you got Honourable Karen Bass. You know, she's an extreme leftist. Anne Applebaum. She's another extreme leftist and an academic. She's married to a Polish minister. I can't remember what his name is. And she wrote a book about Ukraine, funny enough. Keep going down.
Tim Kaine.
Tim Kaine is in there.
Victoria
Nuland. Stop. Victoria Nuland. We'll get into her in a minute. She's a big player in all of this as well. So keep going up.
Ben Sass. Elliot Abrams on leave. Big Iran Contra figure. Elliot Abrams, who is the Trump administration's current envoy to Venezuela. So got a good old Elliot Abrams down. He's going to pop up in quite a few of these think tanks. If you really pay
Exactly.
attention, he is definitely one that's in the revolving door. Now, also back to Casey for a minute, he was involved in the cowboy scandals during the Reagan White House and was a Knight of
Hmm.
Malta as well. And he was director of the CIA, so he was very much Jesuit trained, Fordham University. Very much, Casey was very much a deep state,
Well,
working
I've
within the
I've
deep
got
state.
I've managed to find an Iranian intelligence propaganda video, and it's quite poor quality, but it's got like an animated scene at the very beginning. And in the beginning, it's got Bill Smith, John McCain,
Hmm.
Gene Sharp, and George Soros. So Soros and McCain go back together as well. They link together. But, it gets better because if you look at what I said with Wesley Clark, I mean, this guy ran for office in 2004 for
Under
a Democrat
under the
president,
Democrats, yeah.
for a president, but then he handed it over to Jim Kerry. Not Jim. What's the idiot's name? John Kerry.
Hmm.
And then he also was then on board with Hillary Clinton. So he's a Clintonite.
And Wesley Clark too. He had a, I think he had a, I have to look it up, but he had a offshore online gambling company that came up under the Paradise Papers.
Yep.
So yeah, Clark's another revolving door of these generals that go in and out of all these think tank
So
groups.
we've got Clark. Like I said, if we go down to 2009, was when Hillary Clinton comes out with this wonderful idea called Civil Society 2.0, a Soros and Clinton collaboration based on a paper in the Bush's administration, diplomatic something, whatever, which was talking about what was going on in Colombia and understanding the use of Facebook and social media to motivate people. So they utilised that, plus they also utilised what they learnt through the organisation Canvas.
Hmm.
And Canvas was also now cooperating and working with a company called Stratfor.
Okay.
And how do we know they're working with Stratfor? Because of WikiLeaks.
Yep.
So Shira Popovich, who's the guy in charge of Canvas, stroke Otpor, is working alongside Stratfor. And they're very pally-pally because most of the Stratfor people went to his wedding.
Yeah.
So now we've got this organisation of how to activate all of our activists through emotions. Now we use psychological warfare. Now the first outing of Civil Society 2.0 with the help of Otpor.
I do want to go back to Stratfor real quick.
Yeah.
Alex Jones was a part of Stratfor. Here's an email on
Yeah.
WikiLeaks to Alex Jones himself from Stratfor. So, and it is, you can say Alex Jones is a common name, but if you do the research, there's still some research backing this up that still exists, but a lot of it, how you can tell that you're over the target, go look. A lot of it has been scrubbed off the face of the internet.
We'll go into scrubbing of the internet in a minute. So where was I? Oh, yeah. So we've got Civil Society 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Canvas in operation. We've got money now through the National Endowment for Democracy to go through that. And you're also United States Agency for International Development, which, by the way, was from 1961, and it was an invention of John F. Kennedy's. So that's now all set in place. So the Arab Spring comes up. Just read it out, John. Read out the 4 points there.
Actually, let me read the whole thing, because the whole thing is pretty interesting in and of itself.
Well, you read it out then.
Civil Society 2.0 is an initiative to assist non-governmental NGOs and civil society organizations, CSOs, and using new digital tools and technologies to increase the reach and impact of their work. The State Department convened technologists, CSOs, and those who understand the interface of the two groups. Through specific regional events, we gather an understanding of the challenges SCOs face and engage the technology community to help them solve them appropriately. In November 2010, a Tech at State Civil Society event introduced this idea, and its first application, Tech Camp, took place in Santiago, Chile. For Tech Camp Santiago, the Department of State and its partner, Personal Democracy Forum, PDF, convened technologists and civil society leaders from around the Americas to identify and implement improvements. Goals of the program include increasing regional civil society organizations' digital literacy, sharing information, building networks, and matchmaking like-minded individuals to organizations. By expanding capacity overall through the digital sphere, organizations will be able to work more efficiently towards their goals. Global and regional technology and social media experts work together with regional civil society representatives to determine specific need and build practical applications on the following themes: promoting social and economic opportunity, ensuring the safety of our citizens, strengthening effective institutions of democratic governance, and addressing the challenges of energy security and climate change. The issues identified during Tech Camp Chile fed into the Global Random Hacks of Kindness event in December 2010. The combination of Tech Camp training and random hacks programming allowed technology volunteers from around the world to assist in developing solutions for the civil society organizations in attendance in Santiago. Tech Camp, a key program for Civil Society 2.0, is a two-day training event through which the Department of State pairs leaders in the technology community with civil society organizations to provide training, resources, and assistance, and enables civil society organizations to harness the latest connection technologies to build their capacity and advance their missions. Oh boy.
So, there you have the nice, uber special way of putting it. We're going to screw you over paperwork. So now we've got this in place. So like I said, the first real outing of it being utilised was in the Arab Spring. But it was a bit chaotic. So they realised that it was very potent and they needed to control the social media. In order to do that, bring in our friend General Stanley McChrystal.
Oh boy. Now hold on, before you start on McChrystal, let me play something real quick that kind of plays to what we were just talking about. Kevin, let me play a little short clip by good old Stanley McChrystal talking about open source information and sharing. And who really talks about open source information gathering and sharing? Well, that would be one Robert David Steele, who really thinks that's quietly important. So let's see what Stanley McChrystal has to say about this real quick. All right, it's only 5 minutes. So.
When I was a young officer, they told me to follow my instincts, to go with my gut. And what I've learned is that often our instincts are wrong. In the summer of 2010, there was a massive leak of classified documents that came out of the Pentagon. It shocked the world, it shook up the American government, and it made people ask a lot of questions because the mere amount of information that was let out and the potential impacts were significant. And one of the first questions we asked ourselves was, why would a young soldier have access to that much information? Why would we let sensitive things be with a relatively young person? In the summer of 2003, I was assigned to command a Special Operations Task Force. And that task force was spread across the Mideast to fight al-Qaeda. Our main effort was inside Iraq. And our specified mission was to defeat al-Qaeda in Iraq. For almost 5 years, I stayed there. And we focused on fighting a war that was unconventional, and it was difficult, and it was bloody, and it often claimed its highest price among innocent people. We did everything we could to stop al-Qaeda and the foreign fighters that came in as suicide bombers and as accelerants to the violence. We honed our combat skills. We developed new equipment. We parachuted, we helicoptered, we took small boats, we drove, and we walked to objectives night after night to just stop the killing that this network was putting forward. We bled, we died, and we killed to stop that organization from the violence that they were putting largely against the Iraqi people. Now, we did what we knew, how we had grown up, and one of the things that we knew that was in our DNA was secrecy, it was security, it was protecting information, it was the idea that information was the lifeblood and it was what would protect and keep people safe. And we had a sense that as we operated within our organizations, it was important to keep information in the silos within the organizations, particularly only give information to people who had a demonstrated need to know. But the question often came, who need to know? Who needed? Who had to have the information so that they could do the important parts of the job that you needed? And in a tightly coupled world, that's very hard to predict. It's very hard to know who needs to have information and who doesn't. I used to deal with intelligence agencies and I'd complain that they weren't sharing enough intelligence, and with a straight face they'd look at me and they'd say, "What aren't you getting?" I said, if I knew that, we wouldn't have a problem.
I'm gonna play the rest, Kevin, but oh, everybody gets intelligence, right? Open source intelligence sharing, huh? Everyone. Everyone. Oh boy. That continues. We're going to show you guys in a minute how that definitely continued.
Problem. Suddenly you find that information's only of value if you give it to people who have the ability to do something with it. The fact that I know something has zero value if I'm not the person who can actually make something better because of it. So as a consequence, what we did was we changed the idea of information. Instead of knowledge is power, to one where sharing is power. It was the fundamental shift, not new tactics, not new weapons, not new anything else. It was the idea that we were now part of a team, which information became the essential link between us, not a block between us. Now I want everybody to sort of take a deep breath and then let it out. Because in your life, there's going to be information that leaks out you're not going to like. Somebody's going to get my college grades out, and that's going to be a disaster. But it's going to be okay. And I will tell you that I am more scared of the bureaucrat that holds information in a desk drawer or in a safe than I am of someone who leaks. Because ultimately, we'll be better off if we share. Thank you.
Thoughts on that, Kevin?
Well, it's all well and good until it kills people.
Yeah. Ask that to Michael Hastings, but go on. Let's talk about McChrystal for a minute.
Well, ask that to the Chinese agents that miraculously sort of ended up dead in China when a certain person had a server.
That would be Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
So
well, this is all roads lead to Clinton. You do realise that all roads lead to this bloody woman.
So here we have.
So yeah. So what I was saying. So we got him talking about open source information. Okay. So how would you feel saying about that? So this is the guy who was also in 2011, after the Arab Spring, went with DARPA and they weaponized social media. And the program is SMICS, I believe. And this is another fact of it. Defeat disinfo when it is in fact disinfo.
So yeah,
notice how they're pushing the mask mandate, which is about to conform people. It's not about the facts, because if you look at the facts, the masks don't do absolutely anything whatsoever.
And here you have Democrats counter Trump's fake coronavirus news with AI that fought ISIS propaganda. So, oh boy, it looks like the left is perfectly fine with them using AI techniques that fought ISIS propaganda using on the American people, as long as it goes to their advantage.
And look who he was commanded U.S. and NATO forces during the Afghanistan war. NATO forces again. See it again? The link also with NATO. This will all come apparent. So in 2011, he weaponizes it. But what else happens in 2011 is the State Department has decided it's got a new target for regime change. Don't forget, the president of this country has only been voted in since 2010, but they've decided they're going to do a regime change. So in 2011, they send over this wonderful golden boy, and his name is Alec Ross. And he went to Kiev in 2011. And then in 2012, they started setting up tech schools. There's a wonderful video of that, of Mr. Alex Ross speaking, which is a very important video because it tells you openly what they were doing. How many people in these things they set up before Ukraine. So Hillary Clinton had decided regime change in Ukraine, but what else people forget is one of Hillary Clinton's and Bill Clinton's best buddies in Ukraine is a guy called Victor Pinchuk. And Victor Pinchuk is also on the Atlantic Council, is also involved with CrowdStrike, is also good friends with Derek Paracherek, I can't say his name, but the guy who's with CrowdStrike as well. And the other guy who's with CrowdStrike was former Mueller guy. So all these people all linked together again in the Atlantic Council. He's on the board of advisors. You'll find Victor Pinchuk.
Yes, and so here we have, just looking over the Atlantic Council throughout the years, you have James Jones. We'll get to James Jones a little bit later. He's the intern chairman. You got Frederick Kemp, president and CEO. Now some names that you guys might recognize: Henry A. Kissinger on the board of directors. Trying to find H.R. McMaster, Wesley K. Clark, who we mentioned earlier. Another one of those revolving door generals. Michael V. Hayden.
The trash should be in there somewhere, if I believe rightly.
Yes. James A. Baker III. Colin L. Powell. Condoleezza Rice. Robert M. Gates. Michael S. Mullen. Leon E. Panetta. R. James Woolsey. Now this is a little bit of an older one, just to give an idea. Also, there's a Hunt too as well. One of the Hunt family's sons is on the board too. So this Atlantic Council is, my belief, the new Bilderberg Group.
Sort of. I would agree with you on parts of that, but I think it's because you got also connected to that, one of its offshoots of its tentacles is the Brookings Institute. Mm-hmm. And also, you can attach to that your Council of National Policy. You'll find people from the Council of National Policy in the Atlantic Council.
And Council of Foreign Relations, too.
And Council of Foreign Relations will be in there. You'll also find the International Republican Institute members will be in there as well.
Michael Chertoff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you mentioned Victor Pinchuk. He's on one of the newer lists.
And he's on the international advisors.
But they're all there. I mean, it's
He's the international advisors. He was there in 2010 when he got put in there because he created Yalta, not Yalta, Yes, which was Yalta European Summit, which was known as Yes, and all the people would be involved in that. He formed that in 2004, just at the same time as the Orange Revolution, which was funded by Soros and using Otpor, and that ousted his father-in-law, one Leonid Kuchma.
what about the Info War? Interesting, they used that title, right?
Yeah.
From, like,
Belarus, but
behind the Belarus Revolution.
We'll get into Belarus in a minute because that's going on at the moment. They're trying to, because their point is they're going to have Ukraine done and Belarus done. And I've got an article that I'm working through at the moment with this leftist Polish activist reporter, who was talking to Donald Tusk, who in an interview, and they said once Belarus has got their revolution of dignity, just like Ukraine, then they'll be asking for Poland to have their revolution of dignity.
Yeah.
So they're working their way back up again to take over the whole of the Eastern Bloc. This is what Soros and his gang are doing and putting their people in. And the person he would like to probably put in would be Donald Tusk, where the Polish people would not accept Donald Tusk for what he did. And Donald Tusk knows that.
So where do you want to pivot from the Atlantic Council, Kevin?
So let's go back to this situation in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. We have Alex Ross, who's now there. They create tech camps. And these tech camps are training the revolutionaries. Now, in 2014, it was the revolution happened, yeah, and Yanukovych was forced out. Also, at the same time, Yanukovych's buddy, Dmitry Firtash, is forced out. His company, which is an oil company, was in direct competition with another company we'll get into called Navgas. The Navgas is very interesting. We've also got Burisma. The guy that created Burisma embezzled the money from the Ukrainians to form that company up. So this is huge amounts of corruption. So we have all this going on. We've got the texticals. In 2013, they were in Parliament. They were saying that they were formulating a revolution. They knew this revolution was coming. As I pointed out, there's only a tiny percentage of the population was in Kiev. And in my other video, which I showed, the map of where Yanukovych's voting bloc was, which is the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, to the western side of Ukraine, which is more pro-EU, where the Russian side is more pro-Russia. And Yanukovych's voting bloc is there. That's his base. So they put Yanukovych in this position that if he went to go to the European, to go side with the European Parliament, then his voting base would just get rid of him, yeah? So hold on a second on that. No, 1 second. So Yanukovych knew he was stuck between a rock and a hard place, so he went with his voting base, and that's why he chose Russia over the EU. But the EU wanted him to go that way so they could put the country into debt. There's more to it, because the whole program was leaked by Burkhat, which was this cyber hacking thing, and they hacked George Soros's emails, and it shows Soros was behind all of it. It's an incredible thing how he was setting it all up, and he saw himself as the savior of Ukraine. But anyway, now play Alex Ross, because this guy's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Important. They understand that technology is powerful. They understand that they need to incorporate it into their work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're comfortable with it or that they know how to do it. And so one of the programs that we built is called the Virtual Student Foreign Service. It's like a reverse internship. where we've had more than 350 very talented university students train foreign service officers how to use the tools of the 21st century and how to incorporate technology into traditional diplomatic programs. So that's one sort of gong-banging success that I'm really proud of. A second one is a program that Secretary Clinton launched in Marrakesh, Morocco in November of 2009 called Civil Society 2.0. And what we've done with Secretary Clinton's Civil Society 2.0 program is we've taken one of America's undeniable strengths, the strength of our technology and of our innovators, and we've put them to work in service of our diplomatic goals. So what we've done is we've created these things called tech camps, where over a couple days there's very intensive training of grassroots civil society organizations by American technology experts. And this is great because it allows these technology experts the opportunity to sort of give back in a way consistent with their strengths. And it helps the civil society organizations because they are more effective executing against their missions now that they're more savvy about how to harness digital tools. And to date, we've trained more than 800 civil society organizations from 50 countries around the world. This is just an unnuanced success that Secretary Clinton helped bring to the State Department.
Oh boy, sounds like you and I should sign up, Kevin. You want to go sign up for a tech camp?
Okay, so this was broadcasted in 2012. They had 800 done by then in 50 countries, and if you listen to it about the tech companies, which tech companies would be that? Would that be YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc.? And how would that be done? Oh, if I remember rightly, when I pulled up on the on my other video with tech camps, as you go along, you'll see the word NGOs and journalism. So what they're doing is they're creating activist journalists with the tech camps, and what they do with these tech camps, and they will video something. So that image would then be done at an angle as a form of propaganda to give one point of view of the situation. So if you imagine a rioter's fallen over, yeah, and the copper's coming over the top of him, if they take the picture, then it looks like the copper's beating the rioter. Yeah. But if you go back 5 seconds, you'll see the rioter probably tried to stab the police officer. Yeah? So then the whole story changes completely. The classic example of that would be the Nicholas Sandman story, where they took this picture of him smiling smugly with this Indian guy banging his drum, yeah? And it all went through the newspapers about how this guy wearing the MAGA hat, he was this insolent, blah, 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 blah. And they portrayed him as this racist thug against this elder Indian gentleman, yeah? Native Indian gentleman. But when the whole video was shown, the narrative completely changed, which is why Sandman's won all his court cases with this. But that's Civil Society 2.0 in action. Another example is, I don't know if you can pull it up, I sent you a picture earlier on with the cartridge.
We'll do. We can go ahead and start talking about it, Kevin.
So the cartridge on this picture of this guy's neck, which is the individual that was, hang on a second.
So I guess so
the cartridge, right? So the image he's got is he's showing this picture because he's in Belarus, Minsk, where this civil society revolution's going on, another kind of revolution going on in Belarus, and he's holding this cartridge, and it says the words "Made in Poland." It's in English. If it's a Polish company, it would be written in Polish for a start off. Mm-hmm. Second off, there's an embargo on anything going into Belarus from Poland. So it can't have come from Poland. What this is intentionally doing is to undermine the government in Poland as being guilty of supplying weapons to the Belarusian police to shoot the peaceful protesters. You'll hear that word quite often. Peaceful protesters. Go back to Gene Sharp. Peaceful protesters. Okay, this is constantly being used by these people. It's this, when you see the violence, you know, But hang on a minute, how can that be peaceful? Your eyes are not deceiving you, but they're trying to make you believe you're not seeing what you're seeing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they're twisting your reality. So
they're saying the riots and the
Mm-hmm.
looting, that's peaceful protesting. Now, there were actually peaceful protests going on. There was a few
Yeah.
here in Fayetteville. But there's a big difference between peaceful protesting and abiding by the laws and exercising your freedom of assembly, First Amendment rights, and causing property damage and harming people and killing people and stealing and looting. They're two different things. But they label it all as such, though.
And it goes back to what Pelosi said herself from her own mouth about the wrap-up smear. First you demonize, then you feed the lies and the disinformation, you pass it to the press then report on what you've told them, and then you report on what the press has put out. So in other words, it's circular reporting. It's circular reporting, John. That's what they've been doing. And that's how they've always been doing this. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it for years. So all the stories you're hearing, you don't know if they're true or not.
I can take the dog if you
I've done it.
Very much so, Kevin. I mean, you don't really know,
No. So what you look at is when you see all this disinformation, where's it all coming from? It's coming from these people to the media, and the media then regurgitates it. I'll challenge anybody. Go and pick up an article, a newspaper article, and see how many times that's repeated word for word in another paper. I've amount of times when I'm doing my research, I go and find an article, and I'll find the same article in 10 different other things, word for word the same.
Yeah.
And then you hear them in the newscasting rooms, So then the other side of civil society 2.0 means you don't have to have the press in these dangerous positions. And now you've got talking heads on television showing the videos of these and saying, oh, look how terrible these police are and look how evil this organisation is or this government is, yeah? But you're not seeing the full picture. You're only getting part of it. You're not getting an independent view in there. What you're getting is an activist view of the situation.
Yeah. Michael Hastings wrote a lot about it in his book, The Operator. It's a very excellent book. Everybody should go read it who's listening. I'm going to talk more about it a little bit later. But he talks about how a lot of the media is in bed with the intelligence communities and the government industrial complex, and that they don't want to speak any ill about the things that they see when reporting, especially in war, because they'll be blacklisted and they'll lose their jobs and they'll lose their favors. And there's a lot of that going on, but at least there would be some true people in reporting like Hastings that like when you actually have the media, and trust me, I know the media is corrupt, but there are still a few good reporters that slip through, like Gary Webb or Michael Hastings, for example. So when they're out there and they're reporting, it's actually a reporter doing, actual reporting for a news organization. So there's more accountability than it is every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there and Jane with their cell phones, recording and sending in information. Sometimes you do get more true angles, sometimes you don't get me wrong. But then you also get a lot of disinformation that has to be waded through to get the full, complete story. And look, I'm not trying to defend the media at all. I'm not. They're all corrupt. But the problem is a lot of these people who you think are investigative journalists and civil reporters are being trained by these NGOs and by the State Department and not showing the complete picture either. So it's a problem.
So that's the key. The NGOs, again, the non-government. These NGOs are a huge problem, John. They're a massive problem. These NGOs are where they're funneling money through. They're making the contacts through them, and they're activist-based groups.
Yes.
And this is, for instance, BLM is an NGO.
Yes.
It's a non-government organisation, and it's a Marxist organisation, and it's very dangerous, and it's actually what I would call a terrorist organisation. And I'm somebody who has an expert opinion on that from my military training. And understanding what a terrorist organisation, because they're doing this terrorising people into to cowtailing to them. threatening them with violence, in their face intimidation, in some cases actually performing violence.
So you see a lot of the, I guess this is we're flipping over to NGOs real quick. You have the paper Pentagon Jiu-Jitsu, who talks about interactive internet activities, or IIAs, which is the way LBRY talks about them as such. And you did 2 excellent videos on that, and there is some information about IIAs in here and how that then themselves can be used to influence. But however, though they can, the real correct term for it, I have to give Dave Acton credit where credit due, is in this manual for information operations.
No, it's two separate things.
It's 2 separate things. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the one that's in here is in influential internet activities.
No, it's not. It's inform and influence activities.
Inform influence activities. That's it.
And
yes,
it's part of information operations within psychological. So when you hear what Stanley McChrystal said when they were talking about this defeat disinfo, and his point that came out, was that he said they had 3.4 million influencers. Yeah? So the influencers comes from this bit, the psyops, because that's the informed to influence activity. The IIA, which Bergie was talking about, is what we're doing right at this precise moment. And
just
what
talking on Skype.
Talking on Skype, and the people who are there, I can't see what they're interacting, but people are probably talking on the chat. They are actually interacting at the time on the internet, and that is an activity.
But the ops that are actually being used are inform and influence activities, which are IIAs, which is put in this Information Operations FM 313, and inside of that breaks it down, and then of course that leads us to what it has become now with JSOC, which the complete is when we're adding the internet together is now the Military Information Support Operation, or MISO. And then from there we have another excellent but severely downplayed article by Michael Hastings, another runaway general. Army deploys psyops on U.S. senators, talking about Lieutenant General William Caldwell. And I would have known that. I would have known that without reading Hastings' book, because this has been scrubbed completely off the internet except for this article in Rolling Stone, and they couldn't scrub this article because it's referenced in the book. When you go try to look up Lieutenant General William Caldwell, you're not going to find very much about this specific instance, except a few military blogs here and there being like, what he did really wasn't as bad as Hastings claims it was.
There was an individual called Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis that did an 84-page report on it.
Yeah.
And it's completely down, talking about how they were using the psyops against, the American people and the senators and all that.
So you got John McCain, Joseph Lieberman, Jack Reed, Al Franken, Carl Levin. So they were pretty much the generals. And
if you scroll down, it should say the word Petraeus in there, I believe, in that article.
Yes, it does too. It talks about Petraeus, who replaced McChrystal. But yeah, they were.
Petraeus was just the same. He was part of this group, same as Mattis, same as Kelly. All these top generals are all corrupted. You see, they swore an oath to protect the country against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Well, they are the domestic enemy. I'm sorry if people find that insulting, and I don't, because the real good guys are the ones pointing out what these bad guys are doing. These are the rotten apples in the barrel, one would say.
Yes.
This Caldwell is also connected with the same groups of people. If you type his name in, you'll find that he's involved with other things. Yeah. So, but you got Wesley Clark. I mean, Wesley Clark is the big factor in all this. Another general.
So you have Caldwell, and then down here you have Lieutenant Colonel Michael Holmes. It says, "My job in PSYOPs is to play with people's heads to get the enemy to behave the way we want them to behave." The leader of the Information Operation Unit. Oh boy! So you think they're not using that on us? I mean, look at the repeal of the Smith-Munn Act. They're using it on us. They've been using it on us probably even before then. But I mean,
that was done in 2012 by Obama, and they tried to spin that. Oh no, it's not. No. It's about giving the information for the American public to see what's. No. This was actually to put propaganda on people, and Obama done that deliberately.
Yep. And Hastings
Because
said in his
what-
book. Go ahead.
Because what that was about also, when you think about what was happening in 2012, what else was happening in 2012?
Well, a whole bunch of
What
things.
happened in... Huh?
Well, a whole bunch of things happened. I mean, what do you mean specifically that happened? Go ahead.
Benghazi.
Yes.
And what did they try to do and sell as a talking point? It was this film that they were protesting about.
Yes. Yes. That they were upset
And
about.
who was going around doing all that? Susan Rice.
Yes.
And let's talk about women involved in all of this. There's another person's name that will come up as well, and that's Samantha Powers. Is it the former UN woman? Is it Powers or Powell?
Samantha Power.
Samantha Power. Well, she was with Obama before he became president, and she ran on his campaign. She's also the person that wrote the paperwork which they use as the function to justify invading Libya.
She's married to Cass
she was also in Obama's administration to start off with, until she turned around and dared to do what she did, which was turn around and call Hillary Clinton a monster. And then she ended up out of the administration, but then she came back in as the UN as the UN ambassador, and she was the person involved in the unmasking of General Flynn and various other things. She's a pathological liar. She is a very disturbed individual, to say the least. And she was also good friends with our friend George Soros. So when 2008 came up for the presidency for the Democratic side, you had two runners. One was Hillary Clinton, and the one was Barry Soetoro. Oh, sorry, Barack Hussein Obama. I forgot about it. Sorry, it's not Barry Soetoro anymore, is it?
No, it's Barack Hussein Obama now. Get it right.
Right. So what's the odds-on bet that Hillary was told to stand down and that she got the position in the State Department, because that's where the power is, the State Department. Whoever's in the State Department, they've got the keys to the kingdom. Because you've got all that money flowing through, they're running all the embassies all over the place, and the US foreign policy, and this is what the impeachment was really about, what they're trying to cover up. They're not just trying to cover up the corruption. That's the distraction. What they're trying to cover up is the fact that the US policy for the reason for going and doing within Ukraine, which was how the Americans were involved in all this through the US State Department, was a George Soros project that they were involved in, which they should never have been involved in. And that's the real scandal. They were doing a proxy war in Ukraine by removing Yanukovych. Then it set the country on fire because you've got two separate factions. This is the bit that annoys me. For instance, they don't understand regional politics. If we go to what's happening now between Kosovo and Serbia after 21 years, they've managed to get peace there. But there was one guy standing in the way, and his name was Kuri, and he was the former prime minister in Kosovo. But he was a Soros acolyte. He was at the Soros University, and he was heavily involved with Soros, and he was a guy blocking the peace process, which Grenell managed to get rid of him because they basically go and vote no confidence over his handling of coronavirus, and he was kicked out. Now, all of a sudden, Hashi, the president, and 9 other members of the former KLA, 20 years after the Kosovo-Serbian war, are now going to be put in front of the International Criminal Courts, ICC, at The Hague. Mm-hmm. In fact, do me a favour, open up Open Society Foundation history. Just type that in.
Okay.
I want to take people to 2000. Open Society Foundation history. Our history, open it up. Right, roll down to 2000. No, stop there, innit? Go back a second. Go back up 1979. And then go down, scroll down slowly.
Okay.
Stop with that picture. Look at that picture. Back
Fist.
up. Look
The
back.
fist.
The fist.
La resistance.
1984, 1986, 1989, 1991. And this guy is he's in everything. Stop. 2000.
Got Indonesia.
No, 2000. It's in 2000.
I can't go to 2000. There's only 1999, 2001.
Right, keep going back. Keep going up because slowly go up because I come. No, other way. Must be 2002 or something like that. Stop. 2002. Back up to 2002. Right, read that bit there.
The International Criminal Court, long supported by the Open Society Foundations, becomes the first permanent institution responsible for prosecuting genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, building on our work with war crimes and tribunals for Cambodia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, and Yugoslavia. We continue to encourage a debate, understand the possibilities for, and the limits of international justice, including through funding regular monitoring of court proceedings through the International Justice Monitor.
Right. Do you know what that means? That means George Soros controls the International Criminal Court in The Hague.
Mm-hmm.
And who was he having charged in the International Criminal Court in The Hague in 2006?
Slobodan Milosevic.
Slobodan Milosevic, who used to be the Serbian president that he had ousted by his renter mob or renter revolutionaries, Otpor. And isn't it funny that the guy that was ousted out of Kosovo Parliament recently was the guy standing in the way of the peace process, and now all of a sudden 9 members plus the president, Haishi, are now going to be charged in the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, including about human organ harvesting, 20 years after the event. This is how it's played. This is part of all the games they've been doing. And then when you find out in Ukraine, which is this is what it's all about. This is why the Democrats are terrified of Ukraine, because they've got their nose in the trough in there. Remember Woolsey?
Yeah, R. James Woolsey.
Yeah. Well, if you look up the company Velta, VELTA, in Ukraine, Woolsey Velta, you'll find that he's on the board there.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Then if you pull up Navgas, and I can't remember how to spell that, Navogas. Is it Navogas? NAF. Bear with me 1 second, I'll find out what it's called. Oh yeah, Navgas. Is it Navgas? No, Navogas. Pull up the board.
No, I can't.
I'll tell you what it is. Bear with me. It's Navogas Ukraine. Just find Navogas Ukraine.
It's not coming up anything here.
You should have. Let me bear with me a second. I'll tell you how to spell it.
Okay.
There you are, Navogas Ukraine. There's a guy there.
NAVO.
And 1 second, I'll tell you what it is. Navogas. Because that's that senator I found that's corrupt. Kiev Post. NAFTOGAZS.
Okay, it's NAFT.
OGAZ.
Okay. Navigaz of Ukraine. Okay, there we go.
Right, now pull up the board. Board of Directors.
I'm trying to find it. Here we go.
Right, keep going now. Up. Keep going. That's the Chief Executive Officer. Keep going down then. It should be... Where is he? Out of Underlander. That's not the right board. It's
Supervisory board?
yeah. That's the one. Stop. Go up. That guy there.
Amos Hochstein?
Hochstein. Let's take that name.
Okay.
And then type it in. So you got Wolsey in this company, Velta, which is in titanium. And look who he's associated with.
He worked for the Barack Obama administration under Secretaries of State, both of them, Hillary Clinton and John Kerry.
Yeah,
And he linked to
also,
council as well.
Yeah, and who else are you with? He's with Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And he works on this gas company, Naftogaz, which is under investigation for corruption, for ripping off the Ukrainian people. But their competitor is another Ukrainian gas company that a certain senator was paid $5,000 from Soros from Mississippi, who went and wrote a letter to then the Attorney General Jeff Sessions to have this guy investigated as a threat to Ukraine, and that name is Dmitry Firtash. This was their rival. The same guy who was the rival of Yulia Tymoshenko, the same guy who was good friends with Viktor Yanukovych, and he fought the extradition orders in Austria, Dmitry Firtash. Mm-hmm. It's the same guy they're trying to link Trump with as well. And this guy, Amos Hochstein, was supposed to be also there at the impeachment for Ukraine. But the guy who's the whistleblower for Ukraine scandal isn't from America. The guy who was actually the whistleblower, who would have contacted this guy, who would have contacted Vindman or Charamella, who would have contacted Vindman, whatever, yeah, the real whistleblower was a Ukrainian who was actually under investigation for embezzling $3 billion of US money. And he was put under warrant for his arrest, which is why he couldn't come to the US. And shortly after that was when the so-called phone call story came out, yeah? And they're trying to make out that your man's looking for information on Biden. Mm-hmm. Then they tried to make out that Perry was trying to remove that guy from a national company, a national gas company of Ukraine, when they got no power to do that. This again is this smear, the lie, the psyops going on to hide what they're doing. This is, you've got all these people involved in the gas companies, in the coal companies, in every single one of these revolutionary places. You will find people involved in there from the State Department or former military officers or former CIA of somehow getting these wonderful paid jobs on these boards, getting paid money for doing what? When did Hodgkin become an expert in Ukrainian gas?
It's just a revolving door of getting your people in to work corruption and make deals and
that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the Civil Society 2.0 Coa revolutions, is to do that. Soros then gets his people put in there that are under his influence. So when you can't look up Nabu leaks anymore, by the way, because if you listen to Nabu leaks, you will hear Poroshenko is basically Biden's lapdog. This is the president of a country, and he's doing what he's told by a vice president of another country. To the point where he's ordering him to nationalize a bank. It's none of his damn business to do that. It's not America's business to do that. What it was to cover up the corruption and the money laundering that was going through that bank.
So, to circle back to here is something I found. Psychological operations are critical to the success of the United States Army during war and peacetime. In 2010, the term psychological operation was deemed too menacing by the Department of Defense when they directed the Army to replace it with a new term, Military Information Support Operations, MISO. However, these units have returned to use
miso, isn't that a Japanese dish?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. To use PSYOP per Army Special Operations Command guidance of October 2007. Well, did they? And here's the PSYOP insignia: persuade, change, and influence. And of course, here in that one document I showed earlier, they talk about MISO down here: Military Information Support Operations. So yeah, it's they can use whatever term they deem necessary for it. And like we mentioned earlier,
it's all wordplay.
So what about James L. Jones and James L. Jones III, and what we believe that the technology for dynology, and what they're using through ClearForce, what that truly was, Kevin? Can you briefly go over that real quick?
What I believe is right. So, for instance, let's talk about what ShadowNet is. It's a hardware, and what basically ShadowNet does is a data information collecting. So it's a data storage. Yeah. So if you phone up a company or you contact the company via the internet, the actual new firewall, which will be this ShadowNet, will be in front of your actual servers and their firewall. So this acts as a double firewall. So when somebody comes into your server, it will hit this firewall first, and then that will send a ping back to wherever it comes from, and it takes all the data from where it's come from. So it knows exactly what you are, what you're typing, etc. And it can probably go into your bank accounts and everything else. What the other thing is, which James Jones Jr. the third, whatever it is, the son, James Jones the third, right, wrote a program which basically is social engineering in itself, is a social credit score system in itself. But what that does, that is data profiling. So what it's doing, it's constantly monitoring everything you do on the internet, to determining whether you're a threat or not. So for instance, if you type in a wrong word, then that will ping, and then that will put a mark on your paper to be investigated even further. So this is an intrusive, absolutely intrusive program for anybody working in any company. As soon as you sign your rights away to that means they can go into your private Facebook account, they can go into your Twitter account, they can get your details from your bank account to find out if you're in any financial troubles, whether that will put you at risk. Now, for security purposes and high security jobs, yeah, I get that. But you would also actually be in clearance, and they would make sure you wouldn't be in that position in the first place. Mm-hmm. So that counteracts that argument. This actual program in itself is, like I said, it goes into everything, your telephone calls, your text messages, anything and everything you do, and it data profiles you. Yeah. So you have ShadowNet itself, which is data information, and this program, which I've forgotten what the name of it is now, but that is data profiling. So then they can then adjust what kind of person you are. So imagine if you want to do a psychological evaluation to see what you can do to say, coerce them into doing something they wouldn't normally do, you would know exactly where their weak points are, and any good psychological operator in information operations can utilize that to turn you.
So here you have Wikistrat. Of course, James Jones was on the board of Wikistrat, with General Michael Hayden.
And all these things are about a digital world where they're spying on it and everything you do. Because when the NSA program, it's like, for instance, what was the first program on the NSA one before what's his name, Snowden? Was it Orbis?
I think so, yes.
So there was the one with the Department of Justice. Then it was, I can't remember the one of
Well, you
just
had
one.
you had during the 1980s, and you had the Promise software
That's
scanner.
it, Promise.
Promise. Okay.
That's it. So you had Promise. Then it went to the next one, which is what Snowden exposed, yeah, and Hayden was chasing him all over the place because of it.
Yeah, I think Snowden was a soft disclosure, but tit for tat on
But
that. But yeah,
this what they've created here with the Jones and Hayden and all that lot with Clear Force, yeah, because don't forget this is under Clear Force, this wonderful patent they got, is to ensure that there's never ever a Snowden again. Basically, they've got the perfect tool to make sure that nobody can steal information or technology or ever reveal what you're doing. And if somebody is deemed a threat, then they're shut down.
look at all that community. 2,000 plus analysts for Wikistrats. Look at that.
Yeah.
Global analytic. 2,000 plus. Look at all across the globe. Got General James Jones, Michael Hayden. Oh boy. Oh boy. Crowdsourcing information gathering, crowdsourcing whatever they need. Whatever you need.
Crowdsourcing, in other words, data profiling. That's your Cambridge Analytica there.
Yep. Of course, I'm not going to cover Cambridge today, but again, of course, that's in that Nexus. Go back. I've covered Cambridge many times. Of course, Flynn. Cambridge was Bannon. Was a company started as a spinoff from SCL Group with Bannon and the Mercers. Of course, Flynn was on the advisory board for Cambridge Analytica.
But the original guy that was involved with it was involved with what? Black Cube.
Yes, and what's his name? But with Flynn, he didn't disclose it in his financial disclosure form that he got paid initially from SCL Group, and later did. And when he was caught out on it, when I read Michael Hastings' book, The Operators, it made such a clear picture of how much Flynn and his brother Charlie Flynn, both of them were under McChrystal. They worshiped this man and would do anything for him, literally anything. So Flynn is tied to the hip with McChrystal. I don't care what anybody says. They're both Democrats. I don't care if Flynn spoke to the CMP and where we go one, we go all, and all that horse crap or everything like that. When you read that book, you will learn how close these men would die for each other. All right?
Yeah, but that's a brotherhood. That's something, unless you've been in the military, you won't fully grasp that brotherhood.
But I think for them it's even more than that. They're like best buds.
But this is the thing. There was, like I said, this Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis did a very incredible interview on Tucker, and he basically pointed out the fact that most of these generals, they want these wars, they want these situations. Why? First of all, it puts a medal on the chest, and second of all, it gives them street credit, gives them credence to being who they are.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it gives them this he's been such and such, he was in that war, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? There's nothing worse than having an officer that hasn't been anywhere or done anything. They're just looked at and disdained, because this is the mentality of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And what really upsets me about this, Call of Duty Endowment, this is a separate charity. Now, everybody keeps going about Call. I want to get onto this, actually. Now you pulled that. Call of Duty.
That's why I brought it up.
Right. But they're spinning this story that General Jones created Call of Duty. No, he didn't create Call of Duty. They created the Call of Duty Endowment, which was linked up with the people that created the Call of Duty, that wanted to give back to the veterans. And that's what that is. It's an NGO set up on top of the actual game Call of Duty. Was it Imagine? Was the original company that wrote it?
Activision.
Now, Activision is what owns it now with Visceral, but before that it was a company called Imagine, which was then taken over. And then the other chairman...
You talk about Infinity Ward.
Infinity, that's it. And the other chairmen of this board are the actual people of Activision and Visceral. So it's a whole plethora of people on there. So, but this again is disinformation being pushed out by a so-called PSYOP operative called Bergie. I mean, that psychopathic sociopath called Tory.
So here we have also one thing I wanted to bring up too. Now I understand that Jenny Cohen is a huge leftist, but she's not wrong here. So here, of course, Dynology was listed with 3EDC Strategic Partners and New Media Communications, which was Michael Connell's company, who was assassinated when Karl Rove and John Kenneth Blackwell rigged the vote in Ohio for Trump. I'm not Trump. George W. Bush to win against John Kerry in 2004. And so of course James Jones, which I found out through the operators, Michael Hastings, again it reaffirmed this. James Jones is really good friends with former Arizona Senator John McCain.
John McCain's name's everywhere in this. Don't forget, John McCain for 25 years was the head of the International Republican Institute that oversaw the National Endowment Democracy, and also was involved in lots of these plannings and that, and is also good friends with Mr. George Soros. And don't forget the McCain Foundation, where it is also involved in all of this. McCain was up to his neck in all this.
Very much so.
And McCain, there's a lot of stuff I'm finding out about what McCain's like. For instance, when we talk about ISIS and all that, McCain met Baghdadi before it was ISIS I think it was in Iraq. In Ukraine, McCain stood with a guy from Svoboda. And Svoboda, if you pull up the picture, John McCain's Svoboda, and you'll see the guys doing Heil Hitler.
What's the guy's last name?
Just put Svoboda, S-O-V-O-B-D-A.
S-O-V-O...
BDA. That's it.
He did the Roman salute. So
there, the Nazi salute, and he was on the stage with him there. So if you look at the top picture, you'll see John McCain, and behind him is the guy who was the head of Svoboda, ultra-nationalist group. Now, the Polish general that was working with Wesley Clark then decided to pull out of it because of this, and because they brought up with John McCain, also as part of this, was bringing forward an ultra-nationalist called Stepan Bandera. Stepan Bandera is obviously a historical figure that was involved in something called Voin, and the general's uncle was murdered in Voin. It took him 3 days to die because he was stuck to a barn door with pitchforks and axes and knives, and he was left there to die for 3 days. Over 100,000 Polish were genocided in that area.
So to close, this was Michael Connell. He was assassinated. My belief, his plane was crashed.
Wasn't that funny? Funny plane crashes. Ron Brown, anybody? Now this guy. Oh, and a Polish president as well, Lech Kaczynski.
So here you have
the same president that our friend David Petraeus turned up just before the plane crash, knowing that he was going to Smolensk to pick up the paperwork to show that the NKD massacred, under the authority of Stalin, 26,000 Polish officers at Katyn. And it was the same tragedy that befell in 1943 General Sikorski, who was reported to Roosevelt and to Churchill about what he had found out what Stalin was doing to the Polish in Katyn, and then all of a sudden Sikorski's plane crashed off the coast of Gibraltar, All people died apart from the pilot.
So
And
now,
that was all the same thing.
so pretty much what we're talking about with the real ShadowGate Nexus, and we have a lot more.
International. Hang on, look, he's part of US aid there.
Who?
International activism.
Yes, yes, he consulted for USAID. Connell did, yes.
Yes. The same what that funds all the corruption that's going on.
In the International Republican Institute. So, pretty much what me and Kevin tried to put forth with this is that there is a revolving door of generals who are now working through NGOs. Some they have started and gained funding themselves, and others they have not. Some of those names include General Stanley McChrystal, General Michael Flynn, General James Jones, General Wesley Clark,
Lieutenant General William Caldwell.
Yep.
General David Petraeus.
Yep.
General Mattis.
Yes.
General John Kelly. General H.R. McMasters.
And they're all going around, and they're all, doing the bidding of both.
Oh, we forgot General Flynn.
Yes, I said Flynn. So they're doing the bidding of they're doing the bidding of the world order. They're also doing bidding for themselves because they want the glory and the money and the acolytes and power and whatever. And they're doing bidding for the governmental military industrial complex as well.
I'm going to interrupt you just 1 second.
Yeah.
What Soros is doing is following the same methodology of the Fabian Society.
Yes, the Fabian Socialists.
Which I think he would have learnt that in England when he escaped Hungary, which I have still serious concerns of how he got out of Hungary and who brought him over, because this guy was a Nazi collaborator. And Nazi collaborators in Eastern Europe, they didn't last exactly long. They were probably hanged from lampposts, or they were beaten to death within minutes of them being found out, or what they did, because the people they took revenge and retribution very much in the Balkans. So this is a guy who then escaped communism and is now trying to create a Cold War. He's trying to recreate the Cold War, John. That's what I'm seeing, the same things over again. Wesley Clark tried to create World War III with the situation in Kosovo. Hillary Clinton wanted to put a no-fly zone over Syria. They were sending weapons into Syria to kill Russians with.
And it's probably Alexander Soros is probably taking over for a good old Georgie boy.
Yeah, he has done. He has done, because he was involved in Macedonia. Don't forget, it was who was involved with Macedonia and the big vocal point of that? Who's the guy shouting that they should be in NATO?
Who?
And forced it through the Senate?
Who?
John McCain. Why? Why put NATO in Macedonia? Why are they trying to put NATO into all these places? Because that will create Russia to retaliate. They're pushing and pushing to the point where Russia will retaliate, and then that will bring the Cold War back, which means then once you've got the Cold War back, bang goes the military-industrial complex in full overdrive.
And what country are they really trying to push it for right now?
Well, at the moment it's Bulgaria and Belarus.
I would argue this country, and that would be China.
China?
Because here we have the Committee on the Present Danger. Now, the last committees on the present danger, China's the fourth one. The first one you have pretty much dealing with the Soviet Union and the Cold War. The second one did too as well. When you look at these names, it'll be the same ones that, a lot of them that go through all these think tanks even previously before. And the third one was the War on Terror. So you had Larry Haas, Lieberman, R. James Woolsey, R.C. McFarlane. So again, so we have Cold War, terrorism, and now you have China.
Well, see, the terrorism mandal is going to be finished. So let's have another Cold War.
So now, with China, the people that are steering it, the people that you say we got to go, and look, I'm no fan of the Communist Chinese Party, and I do believe in economic tariffs against China, but I don't want boots on the ground. And that's what these people are that's what these people are pulling for. That's what these people want.
What they want to do is if they weaken Russia to the point where China can then invade, which it will do. So this is why Russia is connected to China.
Actually, they took down. I can't really find. Well, they used to have the membership list. I have to go back to Internet Wayback Machine and look. But of course, you have Frank Goffney, CMP member, William Bennett, CMP member, Paul Berkowitz. There's a whole bunch of neocons. Here you go, another general, William J. Boykin.
Yeah.
You have
Steve Bannon. We have all these generals in there, and you got Bannon pushing for war there because Bannon is ex-Navy intel, wasn't he?
Yes, and he's of course Goldman Sachs too as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, you have these people who are banging the drum for boots in the ground for China, another NGO working against us to try to foment war. That's what they want.
Yeah. Well, they ain't going to get it with the guy in the White House at the moment because he's already said that and he's been saying that for years. He wants to pull out of all these unnecessary regime changes and wars, pointless ones, because that's what they've been doing. They've been doing it for 40 years. And the generals have been in bed with it all.
And they still are, and that's what the real ShadowGate Nexus is the government media, and
the
military industrial complex and the hierarchy, the true deep state with intelligence as well, which you could throw that under a governmental structure. But they
and the nexus of it all is the U.S. State Department.
But instead of them going directly through being part of the government, now you have non-government groups and operations that claim they have nothing to do with the government, but obviously when you look, they have everything to do with the government. Like, there's no doubt about it. So now they're like, oh, we're off the books. Don't worry, it's through these NGOs and everything, but that's not the case at all. I mean, look at Blackwater Academy, which is now Blackwater again. Okay, so yes, they're all running operations on us, the American people, and people around the globe.
But don't forget, like I said, when you look back at what they did in Ukraine, they are panicked by Ukraine, John. They are panicked by because in 2016, the emails between George Soros, Victoria Nuland, and Eric Ciaramella went into overdrive to protect whatever they were doing in Ukraine. And the fact that the one thing I disagree more than anything else with what Trump did was arm the Ukrainian army with these anti-tank weapons. But at the same time, all their own weapons were being supposed to be burnt and destroyed in these magical fires, and apparently 80% of the weapons weren't there. And they were shipped out and found their way to Syria into the hands of ISIS. So not only was there a proxy war going on in Ukraine, but were they supplying weapons from Ukraine into Syria and ISIS, seeing that they couldn't do it from Benghazi, Libya anymore?
So that's
a question that's got to be looked into, which I'm looking into at the moment.
So that's where we're at with this Nexus. It's this one huge psychological operation, as Hasdak said in the chat, on the world. And
Yeah.
Hastings talked about that in his book. It's laid out right there in the operators. He even names it as such. And so I mean, me and Kevin are going to continue to dig down on this. I'm going to have Kevin on again probably not say 2 weeks to a month maybe I'll take to get more information on this. We just started. Like I said, this is a hydra. The more you whack at this thing, the more heads pop up. It never ends. It literally never ends. It doesn't. And there's just a lot of money, power, and corruption, and we, the citizens of the world, not even necessarily the citizens of the United States, but the citizens of the world, are the one that have to bear what the elites are doing.
The thing is, I'll just see what Hugh started. You're right. China does not fight with the same way. But the thing being is, it's a dangerous game that's being played, and what they're playing is, for instance, with Soros is now converting all these countries into his own empire to take down Russia. But he's doing it through the US State Department. The US State Department is working in cahoots with him, and at the head of all of this is this nexus at the very top of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, George Soros, and how all that came together was by General Wesley Clark. And the fact that they bombed Serbia illegally, and don't forget, there's information out there that after the Serbian war was finished, Soros and his buddy, the Albanian billionaire, got all the rights to the minerals and gold and coal at the top end of it, which was worth about nearly $1 trillion.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they go in there. They do the regime change. They put their people in, and then they take all the resources. Which reminds me, that's what it was. There's a brilliant James Bond film. I didn't really get the point of it at first. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because everything started in Serbia, in my opinion. So this film is called Quantum of Solace. Well, it's named after the Quantum Group, which is George Soros's group. And James Bond, the real James Bond, actually was a guy called Dukos Popov, I think. Popov. And he was a Serbian. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's we still got a lot to dig on this. You want to tell everybody? Of course, I got your channel up there, Agent Serco, Kevin. Everybody go over there, subscribe to Kevin, please. Doing excellent work.
Well, I've also opened up on Rumble in case they take my channel down, because it is throttled. It is throttled very much because of the information I'm putting on there. And because what they did with Naboo Leaks, which was take that down just like that, because of the last 3 videos that went up there, which shows literally Biden talking with Poroshenko, and they're covering up the basically the corruption. And also there's the incident where Biden's asking Poroshenko what Trump was talking to him about. So, you know, this whole nexus with Biden is beyond corrupt. He is beyond corrupt. This guy should not even be allowed to be going for president, even though it's elder abuse at the moment. But he should be under investigations because he sold his office at the highest level.
Very much so. And anything else you want to say real quick, Kevin, in closing? What's your next video? Maybe give a little teaser.
I'm going to put the backup of history of Serbia, so people understand the nexus of how. I mean, I've talked about it tonight, but I'm going to give everybody the information and the documentation so they can take that for themselves, so they can understand why and how this happened and how this created the situation in Georgia, this effect that goes on with these different colour revolutions. Because the one in Serbia wasn't a colour revolution; it was called the bulldozer revolution. But that was the starting point. And all these contingencies and nexus of all these people coming together. And like I said, you've got the Kosovo Albania side of it, then you've got the Serbia side of it, and Soros is playing in both of those fields. One to get rid of Slobodan Milosevic, and as we showed people today, with the International Criminal Courts, is controlled by Soros. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like he also controls, believe it or not, the European Courts of Human Rights, people in there. And if you realise, he's now controlling all the courts in America because he's buying all the courts up there, which is where all your problems and your riots are happening, because you haven't got decent DAs or anybody else to do the job properly, because Soros is creating the chaos.
And get ready for my next show, which will probably be my video on John Kenneth Blackwell. And get ready, because he's got many connections to people who you think it's only the right. No. He's deeply in bed with the left globalist world order too as well. So get ready for that. It's going to be very interesting and eye-opening who truly is controlling a lot of the elections that we have throughout the world. So, but I want to thank you for coming on, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. My pleasure, John. Hopefully people will start thinking about and looking at things in a more diligent way and realizing that, you know, I know that you've got to thank people for their service and all that, but these guys don't deserve your thanks. They deserve to be in Leavenworth.
Yeah, a lot of these generals are not good people, and they don't have your best interest at heart at all in the slightest bit. So, yeah, it's very true. All right, everybody.